India saw internet being launched only on 15th of August 1995, right? And IndiaMart started off on 1st of April 1996, which is less than 8 months after the internet was launched. In fact, there were just less than 500 odd internet subscribers
in India.
Oh my God. That point in time. Forget about Delhi NCR. We had figured out SEO way back in 96 itself. So in fact, if you would look for any product, for 20 pages of Google, Yahoo, Alta Vista, web crawler, you will only see IndiaMart, nothing else.
ये आज भी होता है.
Debt in our family is forbidden. Doing something by burning money is forbidden. Anything else, family will support you, but if you're burning money in your business, please shut this off and go back home. That was the mantra. The algorithm which is built, which now identifies who is the right, let's say, supplier for any buyer, or who's the right buyer for any supplier, that algorithm essentially has data elements which are not available with anybody in the world.
Greetings everyone. In this edition of Exploring Minds, we have with us a very special guest, Mr. Brijesh Agarwal, who is the co-founder at IndiaMart and is also of Laksha's founder and trustee. Very welcome to have you, sir. Thanks a lot.
So much. Thank you.
So you're telling you started working on IndiaMart at 19 years of age.
Yep.
Tell us from that point, how was it? What led you to start IndiaMart? And how was the journey before starting it? What were certain things that shaped you as a person in the early 18 years of your life, sir?
So I come from a traditional Marwadi business family. We used to stay together as a joint family. At one point in time, there were 50 plus of us who used to stay in one single house. So life has been absolutely fun for us, at least in those early days. And when you come from a typical traditional Marwadi family background, there are certain things that obviously come along with it. One, how do you live together even when you have different choices, different tastes altogether? That does come naturally to us. Second, since you've always been born and brought up within the environment where business is obviously talked about more than anything else. So basics of business, what is it that is revenue, what is it that is profit, how do you ensure cash flows, all of that obviously came along because we grew up within that environment. We also were initially, even in the family, taught about that you have to go ahead and do things by your own self. Rather than learning everything inside the classroom. So studies were very important. Marks weren't.
Okay.
Right. The only thing that was asked is you've passed.
That's enough.
That's enough. But then we were also asked to, let's say, count those notes which we used to get from our petrol pump. Do the calculations for the entire day. So what you call as a day book today, right? That had to be matched. We used to do that. We would go and deposit money in the bank. We would go ahead and withdraw money from the bank. We would get a DD made at that time. Demand draft is no more popular now. But all of this was something that we were exposed to during our childhood itself. That you go ahead and do it with your own bare hands so that you experience the challenges, the strengths, the advantages of all of this, and you learn from it. Now, on IndiaMart side, my elder brother Dinesh, who started off IndiaMart, essentially he's a computer software engineer, was in US between 92 to 95, and that was a time when internet had started to take off in the US. Netscape as a browser had come in, I think in 94, and that allowed normal users to use a graphical interface to access the internet.
In India for the first time?
Not in India, I think worldwide, right? You had started to see that a UI-based interface actually allowing you to access the large pool of data that was available on the internet. So he came back and wanted to start off something on the internet side. And then we finally landed on building up of a marketplace which would enable trade between exporters from India and buyers from outside India, because the entire traffic that was there was from outside of India. India, saw internet being launched only on 15th of August 1995, right? And IndiaMart started off on 1st of April 1996, which is less than 8 months after the internet was launched. In fact, there were just less than 500 odd internet subscribers
in India.
Oh my God. That point in time. Forget about Delhi NCR. You can call us stupid, foolish, idiotic, but that's how it actually happened. Had we looked at numbers, probably we wouldn't have gotten into it at that point in time. But so he started that off. I had come in on my summer vacation holiday because I was still pursuing my graduation. I had completed second year. So I was here in Delhi for about 2 months at that time. So started helping him with making proposals, making web pages for some of the customers to whom we had to, give a basic demo of how things would look like. And then after that time period, I went back to Lucknow where I was doing my graduation from. And then started selling IndiaMart subscription in Lucknow after my college hours. So that's how the life with IndiaMart actually started to happen for me. Spent another year at Lucknow, finished off graduation, learned how to sell, how to pitch the value proposition, how to build web pages, websites for customers, how to get them in business inquiries. Then came in here for my PG. So used to go to college in the first half of the day, used to come back and then start going to office. So evenings till late nights used to be office, mornings till afternoons used to be college. That's how the entire sort of early life for me has been. So I think I've been working now ever since the age of 19 and a half.
Wow.
Right. So it screwed up my college life to a certain extent, but it did propel the professional life in that sense.
Got it. So what was the consumer insight back then? Because there were 500 users on the internet. How many of them were your customers? How many of them you were targeting? And how was it working? You were selling from, you were, curating all the sellers from India and all the buyers from abroad, and you were exporting things. So how did it happen? What were you selling? What was the business model that you figured out? And what was the consumer insight that you were having at that time?
See, ours is also a story which in fact is a complete antidote to what people would go ahead and do today, or what even we would go ahead and do today, is to look at data, segmentation, right, market size, and then decide what has to be done. This was complete antithesis of that. It was gut. This is going to become big because the value that internet offered was fabulous. There was no comparison to it. You could just at the blink of a second figure out anything and everything that you really wanted to know about a subject, right? The conviction was that this is going to be the rockstar thing over the next couple of decades. So we said we have to do something related to it. And the first thing that really caught our eye was exporters' yellow pages. Right, Tata Press exporters' yellow pages, Trade India exporters' yellow pages. These were very popular, and they would obviously also get substantial revenues from customers. So we said, why don't we replicate this on the internet by building up IndiaMart, right? And the entire thing was based on this as a premise, that there are importers outside of India who would want to find who are the right exporters from India. It is very difficult for them to do it because not everybody will have access to yellow pages. And it is difficult for you to, go beyond normal classified listings to do any kind of search. So we said we will build India's first digital searchable directory of exporters. And that's how we started off in terms of the business model. First 6 months were terrible. Not even one single customer that we could convince to become a customer on our platform. We didn't realize, as I said, that there were only 500 internet subscribers. So, and this was a new phenomenon. So how would we go to an exporter and convince him what is it that we wanted him to buy? Right? They didn't know what internet was. For you to give a demo of internet was not possible because you needed a telephone connection, which was not available with many people. You needed a dial-up connection, which would take hours to connect. right? And there was literally nothing to, demonstrate that this works, right? So the first 6 months went by like crazy. And, a lot of times what came to my mind is that, is this something really that is going to work? We used to discuss it amongst ourselves. Have we chosen something which is a wrong field for us? But then I think there was this conversation that I had with my grandfather at that time, where we, shared with him that, look, this is not working. Let us come back to the traditional business of petroleum products and we will manage that. Our grandfather never wanted us to be involved with the family business because there were already too many people involved into it. So he said that, okay, let me ask you 2-3 things. And based upon that, let's take a call what needs to be done. So the first question that he asked is that I don't know, what you guys are doing, but whatever you are doing, will it bring any benefit or will it be of any use to anyone? That was his first question. So we did tell him that yes, it is going to be useful because importers need to find exporters here. Exporters had very little opportunity to market themselves except for yellow pages or participating in expensive trade shows. So if they get more inquiries from importers, they will be able to improve their sales. So he said, okay, you are convinced that there is value in it for the customer. I said, yes. The second question is, does the customer see value in the service that you are offering, or is it you who is seeing the value in it? So that obviously became a question which I didn't understand at that time. And I asked him, will you help me understand what is it that you're asking? So he said, ये तुम सोचते हो कि ये उसको फायदा होगा, कि ये वो सोचते हैं कि उनको फायदा होगा. And then he explained it to me that have you spoken with customers, met with customers who have said that they think this is going to work for them or they will benefit from it. So we told him that yes, whosoever we've gone ahead and met, none of them have really thrown us out of their office by saying that, what shit are you really selling to us? Everybody said, show me some examples of people who have used it and benefited from it, and I think then we would be more comfortable. We need validation whether this is something which is going to really work. But theoretically, it does seem like something that is going to work. So he said, okay. So if these two things are okay, then why do you want to come back? Right? The only question that remains here is, how do you get those first few customers so that the rest of the lot start to really become your customer on top of that? So the only thing that you need to do is just stay put, right? There will be some believers who will come your way, right? They will take a chance on you, right? You should deliver value to them. And once you've done that, you will have all of these guys that you've met so far, right? Examples that they can rely upon, they can talk to, and then you will have an up and running business. So I think it's just a matter of time and not whether it is happening or not, right? So you stay put. If you need money for food, money for stay, money for traveling, I'm going to send it from here, but don't come back. Right? And that, by the way, has stayed with us all these 27 years, because today those same set of questions, when you go to let's say management gurus, these are the same basic philosophies that they would teach you, that are you creating something that will bring enormous value for your customer, and have you shown this to the customer and got a validation from them before you really want to jump into it. So I think those let's say 2 questions, for that matter, actually changed the entire thinking. We stayed put, and then from there obviously we kept progressing year after year.
Do you remember your first customer, and what was the story behind converting them?
Okay, so our first customers was Nirula's here.
Ice cream
chain, right? Mr. Deepak Narula. And obviously we had met him multiple times. So the only reason that he became a customer, he said that you guys are very persistent, very perseverant, and I really like the passion with which you're doing things. So I'll take a bet on you, right? Why don't you build something for me whereby NRIs, right, can come and get to see about Nirulas and can just send us an inquiry. So we started from there, and then in fact, just a couple of years later, Nirulas wanted us to build India's first e-commerce website, whereby these same NRIs could place an order using their credit card for stuff to be supplied by Nirulas to their family members here in India.
Wow. So they can gift at some occasion or something?
Kind of, yes.
Huh.
And at that time, there were no payment gateways. We actually got Citibank to work with us, where the customers would type in their credit card number in a form, which will reach as an email to Citibank. They will process payment on that, confirm to Nirulas, and Nirulas will then deliver.
And how much time will it take, this entire process?
Typically about, so everything was finished off in a day's time.
Got it.
Right, but delivery obviously will take 1 or 2 days. So within 2 to 3 days, most of the deliveries used to happen. And these were cakes, largely, ice creams, stuff like that. Phenomenal. And I think his vision, Deepak Nirula's vision at that time of building up an e-commerce business to do these deliveries, right, was out of the world.
Which year was this, sir?
This is 97.
And they were delivering ice creams?
Yeah.
Through, oh my God.
97, 98, that period, this was happening here in Delhi first.
And so this continued, you kind of achieved the flywheel. What happened next? What was the story of, reporting 6 lakh profit and next year it went to 24 lakhs? How did the business model change? What did you realize after getting the first set of customers? This is how we want to make money.
So by the way, this was not something that actually we had intended to do. The intent was to focus more on exporters and buyers coming together on a platform. We realized early that this is not going to happen because there's not enough number of people on the internet in India at that time.
Right.
So we actually had switched to making websites for customers who wanted to target the international audience. And we also got some of these exporters to really become our customers. We had figured out SEO way back in 96 itself. So in fact, if you would look for any product, for 20 pages of Google, Yahoo, Alta Vista, web crawler, you will only see IndiaMart, nothing else.
ये आज भी होता है. So if you search anything on the internet, you get IndiaMart और उसके बाद जो कॉल आने शुरू होते तब तक जब तक आप कन्वर्ट हो रहे हैं.
पहले ये होता था कि you would only get to see IndiaMart and nothing else literally on search engines. We cracked that code very early. So we used to then build websites for exporters, do SEO, get them business inquiries, and obviously they would convert those inquiries into business, so they will pay us. So in fact, that is the business model that we ran for the first 7-8 years, which kept us in the game.
Business,
Whatever money we used to generate, we used to pump in building up the marketplace or the directory at that time. And from 96 till about 2003, 2004, when there was some traction that got built on the internet in India, we only did this. Then we shifted our focus on building up the cross-border commerce marketplace, same exporters from India and importers from outside of India. Around 2009 is when we flipped from just being a exporters marketplace to being a domestic focused B2B marketplace, because we didn't see manufacturing in India actually growing at a pace that exports would essentially be facilitated. China was becoming the default sourcing destination for the world. And the overall, let's say, impact that we had seen because of the Lehman crisis, etc., on exports was all pointing in a direction that it will be difficult for us to grow in that business for a long period of time. So we then switched to the domestic market, and we started to then build a product market fit for that market, which we eventually, I think, sort of achieved around 2014. So effectively, if you really look at, started off in 96, switched to domestic B2B model in 2009, which is almost about, 14 years. And then we found the product market fit after 18 years of starting off. So what you see of IndiaMart today
is very, very different.
Is what started off, let's say, in 2014 and not in 1996.
But how did you survive the dot-com crash? What was the story behind it? Did it impact
Okay, so debt in our family is forbidden. Doing something by burning money is forbidden, right? For anything else, family will support you, but if you're burning money in your business, please shut this off and go back home. That was the mantra. So all these years we were profitable, we had revenues. Our philosophy was that if we earn 100, we will spend 99. So that's the cap, right? We don't spend more than 99 and then use that one back into the business all this while. So dot-com boom happened, dot-com crash happened. Obviously, it did impact us severely because revenues would dry up, salaries were delayed. So those things did happen. And obviously, this was a very difficult, let's say 1.5, 2 years period, especially post dot-com crash or the event that happened when the Twin Towers were brought down, right? So there were obviously these existential threatening moments that did happen. But largely, since we were not dependent on external capital, so for us, it was a much easier route to navigate as compared to a lot of companies who are dependent upon external capital to build their entire business. We bootstrapped for the first 12 years. We got our first capital in 2009, right? So completely bootstrap business. We had so in March 2009 we did about 52 crores of top line for us, all bootstrap, no external capital required.
And this was completely export and import connection?
Largely, yes. We would work for the exporters and help them connect with buyers from outside of India.
So then the insight come that India won't become a next destination for manufacturing and hence will connect. So how did you created the first business model in 2014 and when did you thought of getting the first VC check for your business? What changed because you were growing that bootstrap? And what changed? What?
So we took the money in 2009, even before when we had switched to the domestic B2B model, because we actually needed money to make that switch. Alibaba had come into India at that time. They were a serious competitor. They had all the might and strength to disrupt us. Thankfully, we never had to use that money. We were able. So this entire business is a very operations and execution heavy business. If you don't do things rightly, right, you will be disrupted in this business within no time.
Give us an example. Why do you so it's a marketplace, B2B marketplace where you are creating demand and supply match. How is it an operationally heavy business? What are the things that can go wrong which can keep you away from I'll
pick up a basic example. There is a business owner who's been running a business for the last 20 years based out of Chandni Chowk in Delhi. Firstly, you will have to go to that business owner and say that why do you need internet to expand your business altogether. This guy says, look, लोग चल के आते हैं मेरी दुकान पे, मैं माल बेचता हूँ. Why should I really go out and seek customers? That in itself is the first level of resistance. Second is you will have to go ahead and then convince them that they have to give the money upfront, but the returns may come, may not come, and they will all come later. That is another challenge. Third, they will get inquiries and not orders. They need to call on those inquiries, and follow up on those inquiries, and then convert it into a business. Right? And then when you would ask them, would they have a catalog that we can post on the website? 99% of these businesses have no catalog. We have to take photographs, we have to write technical descriptions, we have to sit with them and agree on what kind of pricing should they really talk about, right? So that has to be done. Then we need to train their people on how to respond to those inquiries, how to create quotations, right? We created templates in doc files which they could use to communicate with the customers. And then obviously when all of this is being changed, right, it is difficult for somebody who's been habitual of getting inbound customers, right, to make this entire switch. So you have to be constantly in touch with the customer on the phone physically so that the customers don't drift away. And all of this requires humongous amount of focus on execution and operational excellence. Any point that you go wrong, the customer will leave you. So therefore, it is extremely operations intensive business, and especially considering those times when this is something internet had not become life by that time period. Right. So all of those were very, very challenging times, and we had fortunately built up I would say one of the best ecosystems of operational excellence serving the SMBs. Even today, when you look at India, how many businesses would you see who have built scale by serving micro and small businesses? I don't think so. You will be able to recall more than 3 or 4.
What are these 3 or 4 names?
Let's say, so IndiaMart, Just Dial, to some extent Naukri, right? Recall any 4th, 5th name now. It's going to be very, very difficult for you to do that.
So how many sellers are there on the platform at this point in time?
So the total number of registered sellers who have their catalog is more than 75 lakhs now.
Take down operational excellence. How did you achieve that to get a scale in this B2B business? जो आप बिल्कुल जो ऐसे जब आप बता रहे हैं कि जो शॉप है उनके पास इनबाउंड क्वेरीज आ रही है, they are not ready to go outbound and they are not able to understand कि इसको कैसे करें. उनको आपने कैसे कन्विंस करा and the number went from 0 to 75 lakhs. What were the techniques in operations that you used? Can you break down operational excellence for us?
So we have been from day one guys who work with first principles.
Okay.
Right? There is no let's say experience that we brought in on how to build a operations heavy business or a SMB focused business. So the only thing that we had was logic and rationale. So one thing that we have been exceptionally good with obviously has been to break a certain task down or an entire process down into specific activities, right? So, and draw a flow chart. If then else, if this happens, then this has to be done. If this happens, then this has to be done. And then when we broke down the entire set of, let's say, program into different activities and tasks, we were also, by the way, very, very heavy on using technology to measure and monitor things. So we had built up an in-house CRM for us in 2001, right? When CRM was not heard of. Every single salesperson had to come in and report which company did they meet today, what all aspects did they discuss, right? And we would review it based upon what was entered into the system, not what was being said or written on a piece of paper. We used to have DSRs, but DSRs then were input into the system so that we could see trends, what is happening and what is not happening. So we were very, very heavy on using technology to monitor and measure every single thing that we used to do, right? And our investments in that from day one were beyond what people would think about doing. So let's say March 2000 is when we did our first 1 CR top line revenue. In 2001 we would have spent more than 10 lakh rupees on just building the CRM.
10% of your top line
revenues at that point in time, because that is what was required to
scale this
entire business. So we've always picked up one problem at a time and then solved it through the first principles approach, and have made good use of measurement and monitoring to decide whether something is working or not. What is not working, we need to redo again. And this has been coupled with absolute amount of perseverance that you would get to see in our culture. Everybody at IndiaMart that you will see will not give up until they found a way. Giving up is not an option. So we've also had, this famous discussion that goes on in the company is that if you're moving ahead, there is a wall that you need to cross and there is no way for you to cross the wall. So you keep banging your head against the wall. It will break one day, right? You just have to do it in a way that you don't harm yourself and die, but just keep banging. At one single point, it will break. So that's the culture that we had, that we will find a way out. We just have to keep trying. There's nothing that cannot be solved.
What were some challenges? What were some walls in your journey where you kept your head banging and then at some later point it got broke? What were the biggest challenges during that time?
So at every place, if you really see, for example, for you to be a profitable business while you're selling to SMBs, as I said, worldwide you will not see a lot of companies doing that in their early years. Right? Post a certain scale, they may become profitable, but not in the early years. We were exceptionally focused on how to keep your cost of sales low.
आपने कैसे अपनी cost of sales low रखी?
Simple है. So, okay, how many calls does a person do in a day? So, we would typically go ahead, make calls by ourselves, take a bus, take an auto, take a scooter, go visit, give presentations, come back, record everything. The way you do it in manufacturing in terms of time and motion study, literally like that, and say, okay, so one person can do this bit. Okay, so if I am meeting X number of people in a day, how many of them can I really convert into a prospect? How many of them typically I can get as a customer? So measure that bit, do it by ourselves, right? And then while you're doing it, so say for example, if we were to change the conversion ratio of say 10 prospects and 1 customer at the end of the day. Initially this wasn't there. So we said that until unless we get to this benchmark, we will not be able to build a sustainable business. So we, let's say, kept trying that should we go ahead and change the parameters based upon which we define a prospect.
Okay.
Because if you do it wrongly, you will not be able to see better conversion. So, is there a change which is required? Should we send a senior person on all of these prospects that have been identified by the junior team member, and then it have an impact on the conversion rate? When does price negotiation typically come into play, and at what kind of price can you see what kind of conversion rates? So you keep trying with these different elements until we arrive at that particular rate of conversion. Once you've arrived at that and we know what is the template, then you run with that.
Wow.
So, and some of these things have taken us years also to solve, right? But so be it. What if it takes you 24 months? It's fine. Let's solve for it first.
Got it. And what did you do? You mentioned that Alibaba came into the market. How did you create a moat against Alibaba, which helped you not only sustain but thrive in India market? Because Alibaba, आपकी वजह से Alibaba couldn't grow in India. Right now, if you search anything, you're the site which comes on the top.
So we wouldn't say that we had a moat against Alibaba at that point in time. We have a very strong moat in the business today, which would be very difficult for anybody to beat us on.
Which is the network effect?
So the network effect, obviously. But back in 2008, the only reason why we were able to beat them is operational excellence, right? And the kind of value that we were able to deliver to our customers way back at that point in time and handhold them in that journey of they being able to use it, that was far superior than what Alibaba could have done. So we really did that part very well. There was no defensibility in the business which was as strong that Alibaba couldn't really go ahead. And they had tons of money, they could have beaten us on that count. They could have burnt money to beat us down easily. Today, even if somebody comes in and tries to beat us down by burning money, they won't be able to do it.
Why?
So the algorithm which is built, which now identifies who is the right, let's say, supplier for any buyer, or who's the right buyer for any supplier, that algorithm essentially has data elements which are not available with anybody in the world. Right, so that proprietary data that we now have allows us to do this matchmaking superior. Like, think of it like this: when Google started off, the more people searched on Google, the more intelligent Google became. The same thing is happening on IndiaMart. The more buyers and sellers that come onto the platform, the better data inputs that we have, and therefore superior matchmaking. So that's what is now a very, very strong moat. And this is all after 2014 that we sort of started to build upon.
Wow. And speaking about data, you're kind of a pulse to India's B2B market and India's MSME. What kind of insights have you, garnered from your data after, it's a huge amount of data. What kind of insights do you have about MSMEs, about B2B business, about some segments which you believe can be the next game changer? Because you kind of had a philosophy about manufacturing versus import back then without any data, but now you have data. What does the data say?
So one, I think from a data standpoint, if you really look at, we have a very strong profile of suppliers on what is it that they are good at selling or what is it that they sell more. So let's say a furniture supplier may come in and say that I deal with everything, table, chair, sofa, right, everything. But then we know that when they receive a business inquiry, they 80% of the time only respond to inquiries for chairs. So it means they have an inherent strength of selling chairs and not tables and sofas and everything else. While they can showcase in their showroom or in their catalog, but what is it that they really sell is this particular product. So this, for example, becomes a very strong profiling input for us vis-a-vis any business for that matter. Second, we are able to also see what volumes of inquiries that these businesses typically are getting, and is what kind of growth in that are we really seeing here. That's a good proxy indicator of what kind of growth in their own business the customers would end up seeing. So if you look at these examples, there are 30-40 different kinds of such data points that you will see just about the profile of the customer. Then when you start to look at, let's say, at a geography level, city, state level, or you start to look at a sector level, you would be able to see trends, as to where do you see higher amount of economic activity happening vis-a-vis the other places. So there are things that you can derive out of these large volumes of data. The stuff which we use data for, obviously one is to keep growing our existing core business. The second thing that we also start to look at is how can we use this profiling data to solve another problem for the small business. So far we only solve one problem, which is how do you find a new customer for yourself? That's the only problem that we've been solving all these 27 years. We've not drifted away from it, and we are not yet done. There is a lot more that we can do to make this process a lot more convenient and easier for the customers. We've also now identified, for example, another problem that we've started to work on is how do we solve for accounting, taxation and compliance for these small businesses, because post GST, this has become a huge challenge. And while you have accounting softwares that exist in the country that can help you do that, how can we use this data to solve that problem even better? Right? So we pick up one problem at a time, and then probably we will give it 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it takes, for us to solve that to the point that that is the best possible solution one can really think about. So we would then use data to focus upon solving just this problem. See, just the availability of data cannot define what problem should one go ahead and solve. Right? You have to pick up a problem and then say, okay, do I have data to solve for this or not? So we've picked up this problem because we still want to focus on solving problems for micro and small businesses. We don't want to move away from that. There are very few companies in the world who are actually solving it for them.
Why do you think, we have heard the statement that MSMEs are the backbone of any democracy. What's your understanding of this? And what's the bigger challenge that MSMEs are facing? Why it's that it's not growing at a pace that it should be?
So, there is no doubt that they form the backbone, because if these MSMEs don't exist, the inputs to the larger businesses, they won't really come in handy. MSMEs, by the way, are extremely cost efficient. The kind of cost at which they would operate, for any large business to really operate at that cost levels, will be next to impossible.
How does it work?
So, when you, let's say, study about family run businesses, especially there's a research on how family run businesses are more efficient than corporate businesses, this is for Italy,
Hmm.
is because the kind of communication flow that you will have between people, the kind of, let's say, resources that you will need in terms of infrastructure to solve for something, all of these requirements are not there because the focus of those guys is on building a product, building a service, or solving a problem for the customer without those large jig-bang stuff. See, if you only have 10 people versus you have 1,000 people, you will have to add on layers to manage those 1,000 people, which are not required for managing 10 folks.
Right.
So the cost obviously goes up as soon as you scale. So scaling up, then between family, relatives, people who understand each other's languages, who are actually glued into the vision mission of what you specifically want to do, the sense of ownership that you have is very, very different in these businesses. So all of that contributes towards smaller businesses being more efficient in a lot of things. They would not be efficient in everything. Right? Anything that a machine can go back and do potentially will be much more cheaper, but there are tons of these areas where you will not find the MSMEs to be beatable by any of these large businesses. So they are definitely the backbone, but the typical challenges of the MSMEs world over also emanates from this fact that they're small, right? And in India, if you would see the way SMEs have been doing business, you are asking them to change that method of doing it with the advent of technology, internet, and now obviously AI, which is going to come in. Any change in the way which you used to work for decades or centuries is not going to happen over time. So making that change happen obviously will create challenges and problems for MSMEs, and that is what you're seeing. So the formalization of business in terms of GST getting imposed, lots of these businesses had to shut shop. Why? Because they were only existent because they were using not paying taxes as the way of really making money for themselves. That needs to change. So there are tons of these challenges, and I'm saying whenever there is a huge transformation that happens, these challenges would be faced by all businesses, small, big, medium, micro, everyone. But for the MSMEs, these challenges are life-threatening most of the times. They don't have huge amount of cash reserves available with them to go through this transformation. There is very little room for you to make mistakes.
Were there any near-death experiences that IndiaMart faced in the journey, sir?
Oh yeah, multiple times. I think from between 96 till about 2008-9, there would have been not less than 3 or 4 such instances.
How did you navigate through them?
The same basic philosophy: first principles, perseverance, continue picking up problems and finding solutions.
When you spoke about family business, we see a lot of founder fights. And how were your dynamics with your brother, and how did you maintain so what did you do when you had, of course there were times when you might have difference of opinions. How do you navigate those? How have you created that kind of ecosystem in the family that you kind of, gel?
So I think one thing that at least we have seen in the value system that our families have brought to us is that you can do whatever you want to do, but you can't break away. That's a said unsaid last line. You can't break away. The family, let's say, I wouldn't say pressure, but the kind of expectation that the family has from you is that we have to stay together, knit together. Sometimes you may have to give up something, and sometimes the others may have to really give up something. That has been ingrained in us right from our childhood. Divorce is not an option. Frankly speaking, that is how it is. You can disagree, you can fight, you can do whatever you would want to do, but you will have to eventually go back and figure a way out on which the two of you can move together. And these difference of opinions, by the way, a lot of times are great difference of opinions. because at least between the two of us, how we've done things is, let's say for 2-3 years, one of us will look at one particular area and then say, now let us look at it from a fresh pair of eyes, and we will interchange those between us. Both of us have different approaches of solving problems, right? So at least we never got blinded that this is the only way of doing it. We kept on refreshing that lens itself, using which we saw these problems. We were able to do it a lot better. And in fact, this is something that constantly keeps going on. None of us specifically go ahead and think that, I am the only one who can solve a problem, right? And nobody else can really go ahead and do that. So that has stayed together. The other thing that has really worked very well is that if one is looking into a particular area at one point in time, we would let that person do it, whether good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, that person own and work upon that. We step in only when, right, it has to be interchanged. So there is one person who will own it.
And the other person won't have any say in that.
So ownership is clearly there. That, let's say, it might be for a specific time period, but for that time period, that person has to own everything. Success, failures, everything there. So it does work like that. But I think the biggest role obviously has been because of the family bond. I don't know if the two of us were not from the same family, would this have been possible? The family definitely made it possible.
Wow. And what was the IPO story? How difficult was it to go for an IPO? And what was the vision back then?
See, we've been terrible fundraisers ourselves all this while. And thankfully, maybe God destined us to be like that so that we don't dilute a lot of equity. But, we've never been able to sell our story very well before the IPO. So even while we were preparing for the IPO, it took us almost about 3 years or so. We made multiple attempts. And then in the final time in 2019 also, we were sitting on one particular day wherein we had to take a decision whether we do it or we don't do it.
The IPO,
because the valuation that we thought should have come to us at the time of doing the IPO, it was very hard for us to convince investors in India specifically. Some of the foreign investors were convinced, but Indian investors were not.
What were they saying?
They wanted to offer a lower value.
Okay.
And the call was, should we really do it? Do we really need to do it? Because we were profitable. We could have run this as a private company altogether for, nth number of years. But obviously we also had a commitment to our investors, to people who had ESOPs available with us, that they should get liquidity. So we eventually decided to go ahead with a lower valuation, and we said, let the market discover the true value of
the company.
Because this is going to be one moment wherein the investors who are selling shares at the time of listing the IPO, we may not get the best value, but at least in the interest of everybody, all the other stakeholders, let us give them the opportunity to have liquidity and let the market decide.
And what was the valuation that you were expecting, and what was the value that...
There was a difference of about 20-25% between our expectation versus what was being offered. So, but then we went ahead with it, and 6 months down the line, everything was changed. In fact, it all surpassed our expectations beyond a point. And today, I think, if you would ask me, I would say the public markets value companies more fairly than the private markets.
Wow. And why do you think so?
They look at performance, they look at numbers.
Private market doesn't look that?
Private investors typically would look at story, would look at what kind of founders are there. They have their own subjective parameters to judge upon. Whereas public market investors are very, very sharp and clear about, you need to have a history, right? And that track record is going to determine what is it that you would be valued as. So we had a good track record, we had a good history. Our governance structures have been very, very transparent, open. So in that sense, I think public markets have been way more rewarding than the private markets.
How different is it to run a publicly listed company then you were doing this before the IPO?
I don't think that there's any level of change in any difficulty. As long as you are well governed, right, you will be able to do well in both the scenarios. There is a challenge with regulators if you're not well governed.
What do you mean by being well governed?
You have to follow all the norms that are specified by the government or by the regulators. You have to do things on a timely basis. You have to be transparent about what you're really going ahead and doing. And you need to have a team which does this day in, day out religiously. So the number of compliances, even if they are 1000, you need to ensure that you comply with those 1000 stuff. If you don't, you obviously will get into a problem. So we've never seen that as an adversary. A lot of people will come back and say, there are too many rules and regulations. Fair enough. They are there at this point in time. You have to just work with that, right? Whenever they get reduced, it will be to our advantage. We don't want to fight with what is not there.
Okay. And how do you deal when your stock price when you are listed, it goes up and down? How do you deal with? How do you see that?
We don't see the stock price every day, so we don't have to deal with it.
Okay, got it.
Then you just have to focus on doing the business well. I have seen that if your business metrics are on a growth trajectory, the markets will respond back favorably. There may be intermittent, let's say, downs that you may get to see, or super highs that you may get to see, but markets are very, very let's say rational in that sense when you look at a year or a 2-year period.
So people who are building businesses at this point in time and they are looking forward to create a new kind of marketplace, what kind of opportunities or what kind of market gaps that you see in your area which are ready to be covered and nobody is looking at them?
Okay, so if you look at our current business, there are areas which we obviously are working on solving further. So let's say even in matchmaking today, we need to matchmake one buyer with say 5 different sellers, so that they can get competitive quotations and they're able to choose which is the best one. Now the level of accuracy can be further improved if we had additional data points available. So how do we capture those additional data points so that this level of accuracy can be increased?
Right.
So that's a good indicator. Can we reduce introductions from 5 to 4 for that matter? Because it will mean less effort on the part of the buyer, and for a seller it will mean that the conversion has gone up from 20 to 25%. Right. So less effort at the end of the seller. So there is still a lot of challenges that exist on how to capture data for these businesses, which can allow you to improve this efficiency both for the buyer and both for the seller. So largely there are lots of things around that, and then you could look at logistics, you could look at payments, how could you make all of that more efficient. But apart from that, every other sector today that you would go ahead, India is at such a fantastic position at this point in time that for the next decade or two, you lay your hands into anything and it is going to expand. You will just have to find a way of doing that. The opportunity that youngsters have at this point, I don't think so that anybody ever in their lifespan will get such a golden period again. Next 10-20 years, it's ours.
If you were to start something again in this era, what would you touch? What is something that you would see कि यार अगर मुझे दोबारा business करना होता तो मैं ये चीज़ में देखता, ये चीज़ करता?
तो ऐसा नहीं है, अभी तो जो हम कर रहे हैं मैं यही करता, because the amount of scale that we can get in this business, that is enormous. The problem that is being solved is a very typical, very, very hard problem, right? And the kind of satisfaction you get when you solve for those issues which not many are looking at solving for, I think that also gives us that inner comfort that at least apart from just earning money, we've also been able to do something which is meaningful for the lives of these micro and small businesses.
And how are you using, you have been saying that you have been at the forefront of using emergent technologies, which has helped IndiaMart. How are you using artificial intelligence at this level, at this stage? And what are some challenges that you're facing when you have, 75 lakh people visiting your site who are your customers? What are certain challenges you face at this stage?
So the machine learning and AI algorithms that we are building obviously are to take care of these 40, 50, 60 variables and do the matchmaking together, because that's where it becomes a complex problem to really solve for. So we've been using this technology and we've been building upon this for the last, I think, 5-6 years now. And we've been able to put it together in a form that gives fairly accurate results at this point in time. The challenge that we have seen in this whole process has been less with anything else but with talent. Folks who can really do this well, their numbers are extremely limited. You may have coders, but people who really understand algorithms, theorems, which need to be deployed to solve a particular problem. The skills around mathematics, for example, is missing. We actually work with professors, one of them was at Singapore University, one of them is from a US-based university. These are folks who have helped us build this entire algo.
Not Indians.
There are team members who work with them, obviously, and both of these professors are Indians, right? But the fact of the matter is that they had to do this while sitting in the US. One of them actually came back from Singapore to India, so we now can work with him here. But it is difficult to get that kind of talent easily.
Got it. So for someone who's starting again a marketplace, how should they go about getting the network effect? And what were certain things जिसने आपको network effect लाने में मदद करी थी? वो पहले buyers लेके आए या पहले sellers लेके आए? वो flywheel कैसे लेके चलता है?
So generally in marketplaces, largely you have to get the supply first and then get the demand. But again, it is not that you have to get 100% of the supply first and 100% demand. You will have to keep shifting between focusing on one thing at one point in time, and this will continue as a step-by-step journey in building up the marketplace. But the first 0.0 from where you start obviously has to be supply.
Supply first, got it. So we are at the end of the session, sir. It will be a rapid fire. You have to multiple questions you have to give answers to. So what is a recent movie or a series that you have watched which had a huge impact on you?
Okay, so movie or
series?
Well, the last movie that really had an impact upon me was Kai Poche, right? I don't think anything in the recent past which would have or which would match that kind of an impact.
What was the impact? What did you learn?
See, in terms of when you look at life per se, how things unfold are completely unpredictable, and yet there are these three friends, right, who go through the ups and downs, and the way they still knit together, right, even after the death of one of the friends, how they sort of get together as a bonded setup. I think that was phenomenal. It was done very, very well. It's a real life situation, right? It is not something which is fantasy. It's real life. It was very, very hard hitting. Another movie, by the way, that I really like is Munna Bhai, especially the part 2. When you look at Gandhigiri, tremendous. Apart from it being a fun movie, there's so much to really learn out of it. So these are movies which really have inspired. Nothing in the recent past that I can really compare it with them.
Got it. Any book that has had a huge impact on your life, sir?
So one book that I really like is The Difficulty of Being Good, right? But in terms of whether it has had an impact on life, I don't know. Impact on life largely has been in terms of a lot of these speeches from different folks, especially Mahatma Gandhi, Swami Vivekanand. These two obviously have been my favorite folks who've whose speeches actually help you understand meaning of what really can be done in life.
Can you give us one instance?
So when you look at the way Vivekanand describes what is the purpose of life, right? How should one think about one's purpose in life? It gives you a lot of clarity that you need to have one thing which you are willing to die for, right? And it can be different for different sets of people. Identifying that purpose of life, right? Using whatever, let's say, experiences you've had, he says is fundamental to defining who you would end up becoming. If you don't have a purpose in life, he says, find that first, right? Otherwise, you will move directionless here and there, and you would not be able to achieve that inner happiness that you would ever want to have.
And does he also tell how to find that purpose?
So again, there is no specific fixed way in which everybody can go ahead and do that. He simply says that, these are some of the parameters which can tell you whether you found a purpose or you've not found a purpose for yourself.
And what is that one purpose that you are willing to die for, sir?
So for me, there are two purposes for that matter, in fact, not just one. One is to ensure that we solve problems for those for whom others are not willing to solve, right? That's something. So people who are not privileged enough that they have solution providers available for them, that's one. And second is that whatever one could really go ahead and do for the family together, right? Anything that keeps the family together, that's the other bit that I would want to die for.
Wow. You have been traveling lately, and your business trips are combined with your family trips as well. What is your favorite travel destination, sir?
Oh, well, it is a small village called Lambor, which has the temple of our Kuldevi. I spend 9 days there every year during the Navratri time period. That's my favorite place, by the way, because the kind of peace that I get there is unbelievable.
How did you meet the most important person in your life, apart from your
she gave birth to me.
Okay. Wow. And what's the best advice that you have ever had? Which kind of change?
So same advice from my grandfather. Those two questions.
Wow. And do you fear anything? What's your fear?
Well, my fear in that sense is that I don't lose my sanity amongst all of this success that has come my way.
How do you do that? How do you try not to lose your sanity?
I let my mother do that for me. She keeps me grounded.
Got it. And what's the next big thing on your bucket list, sir? What's next? What's next for IndiaMart? Or what is next for you personally? Do you think that you will go and eventually tap the global market, or will you
No, I don't think that way. So the next thing for us always is how do we solve for these problems better. Professionally, we will want to continue to do that so that we have a business that is built for the next 50, 100 years, and it continues to be doing a job that brings value for the customers consistently. Because this has to exist beyond us.
Right.
And to be able to build that institution, that in itself, I would say, is a phenomenal achievement.
So you're saying that, a lot of people talk about creating an institution which lasts beyond them, and that requires things not to be people dependent, right? How do you do that? How do you go about building an institution which can last you?
So, I don't know how people think about dependency on people. I would say every business will be people dependent in any case. But yes, routine things, they don't have to be people dependent, right? Anything that can be, let's say, done in a flow chart and can be automated, can be controlled, should be made like that. It has to be processized to that extent. But at the heart and soul lies the culture. And culture is only built by people and not by technologies or robots. So that culture of being able to stay focused on solving problems keep doing that, keep doing that boring effort every year after year. I think that is something that is what is the biggest challenge that we need to really solve for while building this institution.
Wow. And what would be a last piece of advice for someone who is very young? If you had all the energy of a 22-year-old, what would you do, sir? What would be your advice to a 22-year-old who has full energy, who is, India is at the cusp of booming? What would you say to him or her?
See, this is the best time that you can ever have in all your life, right? Whatever you feel excited about, right? Find that one purpose and just go after it. That's the only advice that I will have for anyone.
Got it. Thanks a lot, sir. I believe this has been very insightful. I was conscious of the time, so I had a few, but lovely insights. Thanks a lot. Your piece was very kind, very peaceful insight. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you so
Grateful.
much. Thank you so much for coming over.